The chamber was older than human civilization. Its walls curved upward into darkness, carved from stone that had been pulled from the heart of a dead star. Floating platforms stretched in every direction, each one holding representatives from species that had conquered the stars. While humans still lived in caves. Ambassador David Mercer stood alone in the center of it all. He was 51 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many negotiations fail. His uniform was simple, dark blue with silver trim, the colors of the United Earth Coalition. Behind him, projected in light that seemed almost solid, Earth rotated slowly. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, home god around him, arranged in tiers that rose so high they vanished into shadow, sat the representatives of the Galactic Concord. 12,000 species. 12,000 voices that had ruled this galaxy for 800 million years. And today, every single one of them was here to judge humanity. The Velthary delegation sat to his left, their crystalline bodies catching the light and throwing rainbows across the chamber. They were ancient, patient, and they hated humans with a cold passion that had no name. The Korax occupied the tier above them, massive insectoid creatures with armored shells and compound eyes that never blinked. They clicked their mandibles in anticipation. The Luminari floated in sealed chambers filled with toxic gas, their bioluminescent forms pulsing with colors that conveyed emotions no human could understand. And at the apex of the chamber, seated on thrones that seemed to bend space itself, were the three Eternals. They were the founders of the Concord, the oldest beings in the galaxy. They had existed before the first stars formed, or so the legends claimed. Their forms shifted constantly, never quite solid, never quite light, something in between that hurt to look at directly. The first Eternal spoke, and its voice came from everywhere at once. Species 7412. Designation: human. Origin: Sol system, third planet. You have been summoned to answer for crimes against the Galactic Order. David did not move. He had been an ambassador for 23 years. He had faced warlords and emperors, criminals and saints. He had learned long ago that fear was a choice, and today he chose not to be afraid. The charges are as follows, the first Eternal continued. Unauthorized development of faster-than-light technology. Establishment of colonies beyond your permitted boundaries. Interference with protected primitive worlds. Weapons research exceeding your technological tier. And most seriously, the destruction of a Korax mining station in the Epsilon Reticuli system, resulting in the deaths of 4,000 Korax workers. The Korax section of the chamber erupted in clicking and shrieking. The sound was deafening, a wave of fury that crashed against David from all sides. He stood still and let it wash over him. The first Eternal raised what might have been a hand, and silence fell instantly. How does humanity plead? David looked up at three Eternals. He looked at the 12,000 species arrayed against him. He thought about Earth, spinning behind him. Home to 9 billion people who had no idea their fate was being decided in this chamber. And then he smiled. Before I respond, David said, his voice calm and clear, I would like to ask a question. The second Eternal leaned forward, its form rippling like disturbed water. You do not have the right to ask questions. You are here to answer. Nevertheless, David continued, I believe my question is relevant to these proceedings. I would like to know why humanity was not informed of this trial until 6 hours ago. I would like to know why we were given no time to prepare a defense. And I would like to know why the evidence against us has not been shared with our legal representatives. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several species shifted uncomfortably on their platforms, but the first Eternal's voice grew colder. The Concord does not explain itself to infant species. You have been among the stars for barely 3 centuries. You are children playing at civilization. You will answer the charges, or you will be found guilty by default." David nodded slowly, as if considering this. Then he reached into his pocket and removed a small device no larger than his thumb. He held it up so the chamber could see. "Do you know what this is?" "A primitive communication device," the third Eternal answered. "Electromagnetic transmission. Laughably outdated." "Correct," David said. "And right now, this primitive device is broadcasting to every human settlement in the galaxy. Every colony. Every station. Every ship. 9 billion humans on Earth, and another 3 billion scattered across 47 worlds, are watching this trial." He lowered the device slightly. "They have been watching since we arrived. They have seen how we were treated. They have seen the lack of due process, the denial of our rights, the contempt with which we have been addressed." The first Eternal rose from its throne, its form expanding until it filled the space above David like a storm cloud. "You dare to threaten us? You are nothing. Your species is nothing. We could extinguish your sun with a thought. We could erase every trace of human existence from this galaxy before your next heartbeat." David did not step back. He did not flinch. "You could," he agreed. "But you will not. And why is that?" David pressed a button on the device. "Because as of this moment, humanity has run out of patience." The chamber fell silent. Then, one by one, holographic displays began to activate around the perimeter. Tactical readouts, sensor data, information that the assembled representatives could not immediately process. A Valkyrie commander was the first to understand. Its crystalline body flashed with alarm. "There are signatures," it announced. "Thousands of them, peering across the galaxy, in every sector, at every major trade route." "How many?" the first Eternal demanded. The Valkyrie's voice trembled. 32,000 vessels. All human. All armed. David Mercer turned slowly, looking at the species that had dismissed humanity as primitive, as irrelevant, as children. He saw their fear. He felt their shock. "For 300 years, we have played by your rules," he said. "We have accepted your restrictions. We have bowed to your authority. We have watched as you treated us like animals, denying us the same rights you grant to species far younger than ours." He paused. "That ends today." The first Eternal's form pulsed with fury. "You cannot possibly believe you can fight the entire Concord. You are outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. Your technology is centuries behind ours. This is suicide." David shook his head. "No, this is evolution. This is what happens when you push a species into a corner and leave them no choice but to fight." He held up the communication device again. "I am transmitting a message to the human fleet right now. In exactly 1 hour, unless this tribunal agrees to grant humanity full member status in the Concord, with all the rights and protections that entails, those 32,000 ships will begin Phase 1 of Operation Prometheus." "What is Operation Prometheus?" the second Eternal asked. David smiled again, and this time there was no warmth in it. "You are about to find out." The chamber erupted into chaos. Species shouted at each other, at the Eternals, at David. The Corax demanded immediate retaliation. The Valkyrie called for negotiation. The Luminari simply watched, their forms pulsing with colors no one could read. And David Mercer stood in the center of it all, alone but not afraid, waiting for the galaxy to make its choice. He knew what they would decide. He had known before he walked into this chamber. The Concord had ruled for 800 million years. They would not surrender their authority, because one small species demanded it. But that was exactly what he was counting on. In bunkers scattered across human space, commanders waited for his signal. In shipyards hidden in the darkness between stars, Weapon systems powered up. On Earth, in a facility buried beneath the Himalayan mountains, a team of scientists monitored equipment that the Concord did not know existed. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for over a century. And now, finally, the waiting was over. The hour passed in chaos. In the great chamber of the Galactic Concord. 12,000 species argued and threatened and pleaded. The Corax demanded that humanity be destroyed immediately. The Velthari counseled patience, suggesting that the human fleet was merely a bluff. The Luminari proposed isolation, sealing human space behind an impenetrable barrier. But the three Eternals said nothing. They watched. They waited. And when the hour ended, David Mercer received his answer. "The Concord rejects your demands," the first Eternal announced. "Humanity will surrender unconditionally, or humanity will be erased." David nodded once. He had expected nothing less. He lifted his communication device and spoke a single word: Prometheus. Across the galaxy, 32,000 human vessels received the signal. And then they moved. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the UEC Vengeance, flagship of the Third Fleet. She was 43 years old, with dark hair streaked with gray and hands scarred from decades of service. She had been born on Mars, raised in the orbital stations of Jupiter, and she had never set foot on Earth, but she was about to fight for it. "All ships report ready," her tactical officer announced. Maria looked at the view screen. Before her stretched a Velthari trade convoy, 17 massive cargo vessels carrying resources worth more than the entire economic output of human space. They were guarded by 40 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything in her fleet. She had 12 ships. "Target the cargo vessels," Maria ordered. "Ignore the warships." Her weapons officer hesitated. "Captain, if we ignore the warships, they will destroy us." "They will try," Maria agreed. "But we are not here to survive. We are here to hurt them. Fire when ready." The Vengeance opened fire. 11 other human vessels followed, their weapons cutting through space like streams of liquid light. The Velthari warships responded instantly, their own weapon systems activating with practiced precision. The first human ship died 30 seconds into the engagement. The UEC Defiant took a direct hit to its reactor and vanished in a bloom of nuclear fire. 2 more ships followed within the next minute, but the human weapons found their targets. Cargo vessels began to explode, their contents scattering into the void. Resources that had taken years to gather, gone in moments. The Velthari commander screamed orders, trying to protect their convoy, but the human ships were too fast, too nimble. Maria watched as the UEC Vengeance shuddered under impact after impact. Systems failed. Crew members died. The bridge itself began to crack, atmosphere venting into space. But she did not order a retreat. When the battle ended, 9 human ships had been destroyed, but so had 14 Velthari cargo vessels. The economic damage would take decades to repair, and this was just one battle. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human fleets struck at trade routes, communication relays, fuel depots, and supply stations. They did not try to hold territory. They did not try to defeat enemy fleets in direct combat. They simply attacked, caused as much damage as possible, and vanished into hyperspace before reinforcements could arrive. In the first 6 hours of Operation Prometheus, humanity destroyed 17% of the galactic economy. The Concord had never seen anything like it. In the chamber of the Eternals, panic had replaced contempt. Species that had laughed at humanity now screamed for protection. Trade routes that had been safe for millions of years were suddenly dangerous. The carefully balanced system that had governed the galaxy for 800 million years was crumbling. "This is impossible," the second Eternal declared. "Where did they get these ships? Where did they get these weapons? They are a Tier 4 civilization. They should not be capable of this. David Mercer, still standing on his platform, answered calmly. We have been building in secret for 140 years. Automated factories in dead systems, crewed by volunteers who knew they might never see home again. Ships constructed from materials we mined ourselves, in places your sensors never thought to look. He paused. You assumed that because we were young, we were stupid. That was your mistake. The first Eternal's form contracted, becoming dense, almost solid. When it spoke, its voice was quiet, which was somehow more frightening than its earlier rage. You cannot sustain this. Your resources are finite. Your population is small. Even if you destroy half of our economy, we will recover. And then we will come for you. David nodded. You are correct. We cannot win a war of attrition. But we are not trying to win a war of attrition. Then what are you trying to do? David smiled. We are trying to buy time. For what? For Phase 2. On Earth, in a facility that existed on no official record, Director Anna Webb monitored the chaos unfolding across the galaxy. She was 67 years old, silver-haired, with eyes that had seen too much and remembered all of it. She had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. Her communication officer approached. Director, Ambassador Mercer reports that the Concord has rejected our demands as expected. Phase 1 is proceeding on schedule. Anna nodded. And the Eternals? How are they responding? They seem confused. They are trying to coordinate a military response, but our attacks are too scattered, too unpredictable. By the time they send reinforcements to one location, we have already moved to another. Good. Anna turned to her science officer. What is the status of Project Exodus? The science officer, a young man named Peter Hall, checked his displays. Final calculations are complete. The wormhole generators are ready. We can initiate at your command. Anna looked at the screen that showed Earth, her home, the birthplace of humanity. 9 billion people lived there. 9 billion souls who trusted her to keep them safe. Initiate, she said. Across the planet, hidden generators began to power up. They had been constructed in secret over the course of decades, buried deep underground, connected to power sources that drew energy from the Earth's own core. They represented the greatest engineering achievement in human history. And no one in the galaxy knew they existed. In the chamber of the Concord, alarms began to sound. The Corax High Commander was the first to notice. Something is happening in the Sol system, it announced. Energy readings are off the scale. What are the humans doing? The first Eternal turned its attention to the sensor data, and for the first time in 800 million years, it felt something it barely recognized. Fear. They are not fighting to win, it whispered. They never were. This was all a distraction. David Mercer laughed. It was a genuine laugh, full of triumph and relief, and something that might have been joy. You finally understand, he said. While you were focused on our fleet, while you were trying to contain our attacks, we were doing something else entirely. He pointed at the holographic display of Earth behind him. Watch. The display flickered. The image of Earth began to shimmer, as if seen through heat waves. And then, slowly, impossibly, it began to fade. The first Eternal surged forward. What is this? What are you doing? We are leaving, David said simply. All of us. Every human. Every colony. Every station. Earth itself. We are going somewhere you will never find us. The display went dark. Where Earth had been, there was only empty space, and across the galaxy, 32,000 human vessels received a single message. Exodus complete. Proceed to rally points. The ships began to disappear. Not destroyed, but vanishing through wormholes that opened and closed in fractions of a second. Within minutes, the human fleet was gone. The Concorde was left with nothing but wreckage, economic ruin, and a mystery that would haunt them for generations. Humanity had escaped, but the Eternals knew that this was not over. Humans had proven themselves capable of things that should have been impossible. They had built a fleet in secret, fought a war against the entire galaxy, and then vanished without a trace. The question now was simple. What would they do next? And deep in the hearts of the oldest beings in existence, a terrible suspicion began to form. Perhaps humanity had not fled. Perhaps they were not hiding. Perhaps they were preparing for something far worse. Admiral Thorax of the Corax hegemony led his fleet into the Sol system with murder in his hearts. All three of them beat with fury. The humans had killed 4,000 of his people on that mining station. They had humiliated the Concorde. They had made the mighty Corax look like fools. Now they would pay. His fleet numbered 5,000 warships, each one bristling with weapons, capable of cracking planets. Behind him came another 10,000 vessels from other species, all united in their desire to punish humanity for its rebellion. They emerged from hyperspace, expecting to find Earth waiting for them, expecting to rain fire upon the blue marble that humanity called home, expecting revenge. Instead, they found nothing. "Scan again," Varax ordered. "There must be an error." His sensor officer ran the scans 3 more times. The results were always the same. The third planet from the sun was gone. Not destroyed. Not hidden behind some technological shield. Simply gone, as if it had never existed. There was no debris field, no radiation signature. Nothing to indicate that a planet had ever occupied this orbit. "This is impossible," Varax whispered. But impossibility was becoming common where humans were concerned. News of Earth's disappearance spread across the galaxy within hours. Species that had been preparing for war suddenly found themselves with no target. The Concorde, already reeling from the economic damage of Operation Prometheus, descended into chaos. In the Great Chamber, the three Eternals convened an emergency session. For the first time in recorded history, they seemed uncertain. Where did they go? Demanded a Velthri representative. How did they move an entire planet? Wormhole technology, the first Eternal answered slowly. But not like anything we have seen before. Stable, permanent portals capable of transporting celestial bodies. It should not be possible. And yet it happened, the third Eternal observed. Which means our understanding of what is possible is incomplete. "We must find them," the second Eternal said. "We must track them down and finish this." But how? The galaxy was vast. If humanity had truly found a way to travel beyond its boundaries, they could be anywhere. They could be hiding in another galaxy entirely. They could be so far away that even the fastest ships would take millions of years to reach them. The Concorde had ruled this galaxy for 800 million years. They had never failed to destroy a species that defied them. They had never even considered the possibility that a species might simply leave. And now, for the first time, they faced a threat they could not answer. In a place that had no name. In a location that no galactic sensor could detect. Earth hung in the darkness between galaxies. The wormhole had deposited the planet, its moon, and everything in orbit around it. NTO, the intergalactic void. Here, there were no stars for millions of light years in any direction. Here, the Concorde could search forever and never find them. Director Anna Webb stood in her command center, watching the data flow across her screens. The transition had been rough. Power grids had failed across 3 continents. Tidal forces had caused massive flooding in coastal regions. The psychological shock of seeing an empty sky, devoid of familiar constellations, had triggered panic in millions of people, but they had survived. That was what mattered. "Status report," she ordered. Her aide consulted his tablet. 97% of the population made the transition safely. Casualties are estimated at 40 million from infrastructure failures and civil unrest. Emergency services are overwhelmed, but functioning. 40 million dead. Anna closed her eyes for a moment. 40 million people who had trusted her, who had believed that she knew what she was doing. 40 million families destroyed because she had ordered an operation that had never been attempted in the history of any species, but the alternative had been extinction. The Concord had made that clear. Surrender or die. Those had been the only options they offered. So humanity had chosen a third option. They had run. What about the fleet? Anna asked. All vessels have reached their rally points. Losses from Phase 1 were approximately 18%. The remaining ships are refueling and rearming. 18%. 6,000 ships destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of crew members dead. And Phase 1 had only been the beginning. Anna turned to Peter Hall, her science officer. Is the communication link to Ambassador Mercer still active? Yes, Director. He is still in the Concord chamber. The Eternals have not released him. Anna nodded. David had known the risks when he volunteered for this mission. He had known that he might never come home. But he had insisted, arguing that humanity needed a face in that chamber, someone to deliver their message directly. Put him through, Anna said. David Mercer's face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired, but his eyes were still sharp. Director, he said. I take it the transition was successful? Mostly. What is the situation there? David glanced around. Even through the screen, Anna could see the chaos in the chamber behind him. Species arguing, Eternals conferring, guards moving nervously. They are afraid, David said. For the first time in their existence, they face something they cannot control. It is beautiful to watch. And you? Are you safe? David smiled. They will not kill me. I am their only link to humanity now. As long as I am alive, they can pretend they might still negotiate. Will they negotiate? No, David shook his head. They cannot. If they let humanity escape punishment, every other species in the galaxy will see that defiance is possible. Their entire system depends on the belief that resistance is futile. We have proven that belief wrong. Anna understood. The Concord was not just a government. It was an idea, an ideology of control that had shaped galactic civilization for 800 million years. Humanity had not just challenged that idea. They had shattered it. And now, the consequences were spreading. Reports were already coming in from across the galaxy. Species that had been quietly resentful of Concord rule were suddenly speaking openly about change. Trade alliances were fracturing. Military pacts were being questioned. The careful balance that had maintained order for so long was beginning to tip. The Eternals are going to make a statement, David said. I think you should hear it. Anna nodded and watched as the view shifted to show the first Eternal rising from its throne. The ancient being's form was darker now, denser, as if it had drawn in all available light. Species of the Concord, the Eternal began, we face a crisis unlike any in our history. A species has defied us and escaped consequences. This cannot be allowed to stand. It paused, and when it continued, its voice was colder than the void itself. But we are not without resources. We are not without knowledge. Humanity believes they have found safety in the darkness between galaxies. They are wrong. The first Eternal raised what might have been a hand, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a structure that Anna had never seen before, a vast crystalline lattice orbiting the supermassive black hole at the galaxy's core. This is the conduit, the Eternal announced. It was built by the Founders, the species that existed before all others. It is capable of reaching across any distance, into any dimension, to any location in the universe. We have not used it in over 500 million years because there has been no need. But now we will activate it again. Anna felt her blood turn cold. David, what is that? What is the conduit? David's face had gone pale. I do not know. But whatever it is, they have been hiding it for a very long time. In the chamber, the first Eternal continued. Humanity has one standard galactic day to surrender. If they do not, we will use the conduit to find them, wherever they have fled. And then we will end them. The image faded. The chamber fell silent and across the void between galaxies. In her command center beneath the unfamiliar sky, Director Anna Webb realized that humanity's escape had only been temporary. The real battle was about to begin. The deadline passed. Humanity did not surrender. Director Anna Webb stood in her command center, watching the countdown reach 0. Around her, staff members worked in tense silence. The atmosphere felt heavy, as if the air itself knew that something terrible was about to happen. Any activity from the galactic core? She asked. Peter Hall checked his displays. Our long-range sensors are detecting massive energy buildup near the central black hole. The conduit is activating. Anna closed her eyes. They had hoped that the Eternals were bluffing, that the conduit was just a threat meant to force surrender. But the Eternals had ruled for 800 million years by always following through on their threats. How long until they can locate us? Unknown. We have no data on the conduit's capabilities. It could take hours. It could take seconds. Anna turned to her communication officer. Get me Ambassador Mercer. David's face appeared on the screen moments later. Behind him, the great chamber of the Concord was empty, except for a handful of guards. The other species had fled, afraid of what was about to happen. They activated it, David said. His voice was calm, but Anna could see the tension in his shoulders. The conduit is online. They are searching for Earth right now. Can you stop them? David shook his head. I am one man in a chamber full of beings that could kill me with a thought. No, I cannot stop them. But I might be able to slow them down. How? By giving them something else to think about. David reached into his pocket and removed a small crystal that glowed with inner light. Do you remember the archaeological expedition to the Sculptor Dwarf Galaxy? The one that found the ruins of an extinct civilization? Anna nodded. That expedition had been one of humanity's greatest secrets. They had discovered the remains of a species that had been destroyed by the Eternals over 1 billion years ago. And in those ruins, they had found something extraordinary. I have their final message, David said. The last words of a species that called themselves the Architects. They left it for whoever came after them, hoping someone would understand. What does it say? The truth. David held up the crystal. About the Eternals. About the Concord. About everything. He turned away from the camera and walked toward the center of the chamber, where a platform allowed for galactic broadcasts. The guards moved to stop him, but David spoke quickly. I invoke the right of final statement, he announced. As a condemned species, humanity is entitled to address the Concord one last time. The guards hesitated. The right of final statement was ancient law, established in the earliest days of the Concord. Even the Eternals could not deny it. Proceed, the first Eternal said, its voice heavy with contempt. Speak your final words. They will change nothing. David activated the crystal dot light, exploded from the device, filling the chamber with images that seemed to reach into the minds of everyone watching. Across the galaxy, every species that had access to the Concord's broadcast network saw the same thing. They saw the Architects, a species of beings that had looked almost like humans, but taller, thinner, with skin the color of polished silver. They saw the civilization they had built, spanning thousands of worlds, pushing the boundaries of what was possible, and they saw how they died. The voice of the crystal spoke, translated into every language in the galaxy. We are the architects. We were the first to reach the stars after the founders departed. We explored. We built. We dreamed of what our species could become. The images showed architect ships traveling through the void, discovering wonders beyond imagination. And then we found the engine. The display shifted to show the structure at the galactic core, the same crystalline lattice that the Eternals had called the conduit. The engine is not a weapon. It is not a tool of destruction. It is a gift from the founders to all species who come after them. It can reshape reality. It can create matter and energy from nothing. It can unlock potentials that we cannot even imagine. The voice grew darker, but others feared it. They feared what species might become if they had access to such power. They called themselves the Guardians. They claimed they were protecting the galaxy, but in truth, they were only protecting NG themselves. The images showed the architects fighting against beings of pure energy, beings that shifted and flowed like the Eternals. They destroyed us, not because we threatened them, but because we refused to accept their control. They erased our homeworld. They hunted down every architect ship, every colony, every child. They killed billions. The display showed planets burning, cities crumbling, ships exploding in the darkness. And when they were done, they rewrote history. They made themselves into the founders, the original rulers, the architects of galactic civilization. They created the Concord to ensure that no species would ever grow powerful enough to challenge them again. The voice softened, but we knew they could not kill all of us. We knew that someday another species would rise. Another species would find our message. Another species would be brave enough to fight. The display showed a single image, a small blue planet, third from its sun. To whoever is watching this, to whatever species has found our words, the Eternals are not gods. They are just the survivors of an ancient war, beings who chose fear over hope. They can be defeated. The engine can be freed. The crystal's light faded. The chamber fell silent. David Mercer stood alone on the platform, the crystal still glowing faintly in his hand. "You are not founders," he said, looking up at the three Eternals. "You are tyrants, and your time is over." The first Eternal's form began to expand, filling the chamber with darkness. When it spoke, its voice shook the foundations of the station. "You think this changes anything? You think these lies will turn the galaxy against us? We have ruled for 800 million years. We have destroyed 47 species who defied us. We will destroy yours as well." "Perhaps," David agreed. "But look around you." The Eternal paused. Around the chamber, holographic displays showed feeds from across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, in 1,000 languages, species were reacting to the broadcast. Some were skeptical. Some were afraid, but many were angry. The Velthri Council demanded an investigation. The Luminari announced their withdrawal from the Concord. A dozen smaller species declared that they would no longer follow eternal law. The foundation of galactic order was cracking. "You can destroy humanity," David said, "but you cannot destroy the idea. You cannot make them unsee what they have seen. You cannot make them unlearn the truth." He smiled. "And while you are dealing with rebellions across your empire, while you are trying to hold your precious Concord together, humanity will be coming for the engine." The first Eternal lunged forward, its form becoming sharp, deadly. "You will tell us where they are. You will tell us how to find them." "No," David said simply. "I will not." The Eternal struck Dot in her command center. Anna Webb watched the feed go dark. She had known this was coming. David had known it too. He had volunteered for this mission, understanding that he would not survive it, but he had succeeded. The truth was out. The galaxy was waking up. And now, humanity had one chance. One desperate gamble that would either save them or doom them forever. Begin Phase 3, Anna ordered. We are going after the engine. Across the void, the remaining human fleet began to move. 26,000 ships, carrying the last hope of their species, heading toward the heart of a galaxy that wanted them dead. The final battle was about to begin. The galactic core was a maelstrom. Radiation. Storms swept through the region like hurricanes of fire. Gravitational forces from the supermassive black hole tore at every ship that dared approach. Stars crowded so close together that their light merged into a blinding sea of white. And at the center of it all, orbiting the event horizon itself, hung the engine. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the UEC Resurrection, the new flagship of humanity's fleet. The old Vengeance had been destroyed in Phase 1, along with too many other ships. Too many friends. Too many good people. But the survivors had kept fighting. That was what humans did. All ships report ready, her tactical officer announced. Maria looked at the display showing her fleet. 26,000 vessels spread across the outer edge of the core, waiting for her order. They were battered, damaged, running low on fuel and ammunition. Many of them would not survive what was coming. None of them had asked to turn back. Director Webb, Maria said, opening a communication channel to Earth. We are in position. Anna's face appeared on the screen. She looked exhausted. The past weeks had aged her a decade, but her eyes were still sharp, still determined. The Eternals know you are coming, Anna said. Our intelligence suggests they have concentrated their remaining forces at the engine. You will be facing overwhelming odds. We always face overwhelming odds, Maria replied. That has not stopped us yet. Anna smiled, a brief flicker of warmth in her tired face. No, it has not. Good luck, Captain, and thank you for everything. The channel closed. Maria took a deep breath and turned to her crew. You all know why we are here. You all know what we are facing. The Eternals think they can control the universe. They think they can decide which species live and which die. They think they are gods. She paused. We are going to prove them wrong. The bridge crew responded with grim determination. No cheers, no battle cries. Just the quiet resolve of people who had accepted that they might not survive, but refused to let that stop them. All ships. Maria announced, advance. The human fleet moved forward into the fire. The battle that followed was the largest in galactic history. The Eternals had gathered over 100,000 warships from across the Concord, crewed by species that still believed in their rule. They had positioned defense platforms around the engine, each one capable of destroying entire fleets. They had even manifested directly, their energy forms becoming weapons of impossible power. Against all of this, humanity sent 26,000 battered ships and the desperate hope that their plan would work. The first wave of human vessels reached the outer defenses and began to die. Ships vanished in flashes of light, overwhelmed by weapons they could not match. The defense platforms fired beams that cut through armor like paper. Eternal manifestations swept through squadrons, erasing them from existence. But the humans did not stop. They could not stop. Everything depended on reaching the engine. Captain Maria Santos led the assault from the front. The Resurrection took hit after hit, its shields failing, its hull buckling. Around her, she watched friends die. She watched ships she had served with for decades become debris, and still she pushed forward. Break through the second defense line, she ordered. Concentrate fire on the platforms. Human ships swarmed the defense platforms, sacrificing themselves to take down the massive weapons. For every platform destroyed, 100 human vessels were lost. But slowly, painfully, the fleet advanced. The Eternals realized what was happening too late. They had expected humanity to break, to flee, to surrender when faced with impossible odds. That was what species always did. That was what the galaxy had learned over 800 million years. But humanity had not learned that lesson. They had never accepted the idea that resistance was futile. And now, at the end of everything, they proved why. The UEC resurrection reached the engine. First, Maria stared at the structure through her cracked view screen. It was vast beyond comprehension, a lattice of crystal that stretched for millions of kilometers. Energy pulsed through its framework, power that could reshape reality itself. And at its heart, a single access point glowed with golden light. All remaining ships, Maria announced, form a defensive perimeter. Hold this position as long as you can. Captain? Her tactical officer asked. What are you going to do? Maria stood. I am going to finish this. She walked off the bridge, through corridors filled with smoke and fire, past crew members who saluted as she passed. She reached the shuttle bay, where a single small craft waited, already powered up. Director Webb, Maria said, opening a final communication channel. I am entering the engine. Anna's voice crackled through the static. Maria, we do not know what will happen. The architect's records were incomplete. You might not survive. I know. Maria climbed into the shuttle. But someone has to do it. And I would rather it be me. She launched before Anna could respond. The shuttle flew through the battle, dodging debris and weapons fire, heading straight for the golden light at the engine's core. Eternal manifestations tried to stop her, but human ships threw themselves into the way, buying her precious seconds. Captain Helena Cruz of the UEC Defiant was one of them. Her ship had lost half its crew and most of its weapons. But when she saw Maria's shuttle heading for the engine, she understood. All power to engines, Helena ordered. Ram that Eternal. Her crew did not hesitate. The Defiant slammed into the manifestation at full speed, both ship and entity vanishing in a burst of light. But it was enough. Maria's shuttle slipped through the gap and into the engine itself. Inside, the world changed. Maria found herself floating in a space that had no up or down, no beginning or end. Light surrounded her, but it was not harsh. It was warm, welcoming, almost alive, and then a voice spoke. You are not the first to reach this place. Maria turned. Before her stood a figure made of light, vaguely humanoid, but shifting constantly. I am the Keeper, the figure said. I was left behind by the Founders to guide those who find the engine. You have passed the test. Test? Maria asked. The engine is not a weapon. It is not a tool of control. It is a key meant to unlock the potential of all species who prove themselves worthy. The Eternals feared it because they feared what others might become. But the Founders wanted evolution. They wanted growth. They wanted chaos. Maria laughed, a sound of exhaustion and relief combined. Chaos. Yes, that sounds like us. The Keeper's form shifted, becoming something that might have been a smile. You have paid a great price to reach this place. Many of your kind have died. But their sacrifice was not in vain. It extended what might have been a hand. The engine is now open. Its power will flow to all species in the galaxy. No one will control it. Everyone will have access. What happens next is up to you. Maria hesitated. Will this stop the Eternals? It will make them equal. They will no longer be able to destroy species that defy them. They will have to learn to live with others as partners, not as rulers. And if they refuse, then they will fade, as all tyrants fade when their power is taken away. Maria reached out and took the Keeper's hand. Light exploded from the engine, racing outward at the speed of thought. It swept through the galactic core, past the remaining human fleet, past the stunned eternal manifestations, past the shattered remnants of the Concord forces, it spread to every corner of the galaxy, touching every species, every world, every mind. And everywhere it touched, things began to change. The Velthari felt new possibilities opening before them. The Corax discovered technologies they had never imagined. The Luminari experienced sensations they had no words for. And the Eternals, the ancient rulers who had controlled the galaxy for 800 million years, felt their power slip away. The first Eternal screamed, a sound that echoed across dimensions. But it was too late. The engine was open. The cage was broken. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months later, Director Anna Webb stood on the surface of Earth, looking up at a sky filled with unfamiliar stars. Humanity had returned from the void between galaxies, emerging through wormholes that now connected them to every corner of the Milky Way. The Concord was gone, replaced by something new, something still forming. Species that had been enemies for millions of years were learning to work together. The Eternals, diminished and humbled, had retreated to the galactic core, uncertain of their place in a universe they no longer controlled. And humanity stood at the center of it all, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as the species that had dared to challenge the oldest powers in existence, and won. Anna smiled as she watched the sunset. The sky was red and gold, painted with colors that seemed brighter than before. Beside her, a young officer approached. "Director, the memorial service is about to begin." Anna nodded. They were honoring the dead, the millions who had given their lives for this moment. Captain Maria Santos, Ambassador David Mercer, Captain Helena Cruz, and countless others whose names would be remembered for as long as humanity existed. "Tell them I am coming," Anna said. The officer departed. Anna took one last look at the sky, at the stars that no longer seemed so distant, so cold, so indifferent. Humanity had taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. When pushed into a corner, when denied any other option, when every path seemed closed, humans did not give up. They found another way. They created chaos. And in that chaos, they found freedom.